Why Irish culture? I chose Irish culture for a couple different reasons. One was because it's the primary genetic heritage within my family. And second was because the Irish culture in itself has a variety of different cultures embedded in it due to the fact that Ireland separated into the mainland and Northern Ireland. This can lead to a lot of different complexities that may not be able to be seen in other countries. Now, considering Irish literature, it is composed of a variety of different styles. Traditionally, works were composed of stories of ancient kings and heroes, which were usually transmitted orally. However, major influences such as the introduction of Christianity, as well as the colonization from England, changed what Irish literature was. Irish literature and culture became divided into what is known as Irish and Anglo-Irish. What Anglo-Irish was Irish people who were of English descent. And since the English were the rulers of Ireland, English became the primary language spoken there. What this meant was that most literary works were written in English, contradictory to the traditional Irish language of Gaelic. However, the Gaelic language still survived, usually through the transmission of oral stories and retellings of events. The revival of traditional Ireland was aided by the fact that Gaelic became an official language of the country in 1922. At this time, Ireland had already divided into the two parts, Northern Ireland and the mainland Ireland. These things all together combine to make the current Irish literature, which reflects the bravery of Celtic heroes, as well as the suffering and hardship faced by Irish people throughout the course of their history. And despite the themes of suffering, wit and humor often find themselves within Irish literature, usually through the means of irony and satire. Some significant writers who are Irish are authors including Jonathan Smith, as well as Oscar Wilde. However, the most influential Irish writer throughout history is James Joyce. The following excerpt is from Joyce, and written in 1914. It was a short story collection titled Dubliners. This excerpt is from the short story Sisters. There was no hope for him this time. It was the third stroke. Night after night, I had passed the house. It was vacation time, and studied the lighted square of window. And night after night, I had found it lighted in the same way, faintly and evenly. If he was dead, I thought, I would see the reflection of candles on the darkened blind, for I knew that 2 candles must be set at the head of a corpse. He had often said to me, I am not long for this world, and I had thought his words idle. Now I knew they were true. Every night as I gazed up at the window, I said softly to myself the word paralysis. It had always sounded strangely in my ears, like the word gnomon in the Euclid and the word simony in the Catechism, but now sounded to me like the name of some maleficent and sinful being. It filled me with fear, yet I longed to be nearer to it and to look upon its deadly work. The rest of the story goes on to describe the reaction a boy has when Father Flynn, who is a local priest, dies of a stroke. Joyce's short stories in the Dubliners are all very interesting because they introduce puzzling events that remain pretty much unexplained. As in this one, the priest suffers from paralyzing strokes and eventually dies to them. However, one of the characters, the old cotter, gives a negative comment about Father Flynn, stating he was a very odd man and that he was a peculiar case. This combined with the fact that Father Flynn was heard hysterically laughing alone in a confession box suggests that the priest was also mentally unstable. The boy admits that he would often feel uncomfortable around the father, despite being good friends with him. Joyce combines these elements, which allow the reader to believe Father Flynn was possibly malevolent, but are never really sure. This creates an interesting, but also slightly unsatisfying mood that leaves the reader to be intrigued to read more. James Joyce was born February 2nd, 1882 in Dublin, Ireland. He was the eldest of 10 children and was sent to boarding school at age 6. He later entered the University College in Dublin and eventually found his resolve to become a writer. He published his first work, which was an essay critiquing the Irish literary theatre on catering to popular tastes in 1901. He wrote famous works such as his collection of short stories titled The Dubliners, as well as famous novels Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake. He later died on January 13th, 1941 in Switzerland. How do the themes that dominate Irish literature connect to the rest of the world? The themes of suffering and hardship dominate Irish literature, and they tend to connect to the rest of the world as they reflect issues that have been faced by almost every group of people. This includes things like poverty, loss of culture, and inevitably themes of death. Literary works with subjects like these tend to be very relatable to a large amount of people and a large amount of cultures, and this offers a bridge of connection between Irish people and everybody else. How do I see myself as a part of this culture? I connect to my Irish heritage in a couple different ways. For one, I come from a farming family, which hails down from the times my ancestors used to farm potatoes when they used to live in Ireland, and they actually moved to North America during the potato famine. The potato famine was a dire time for Irish people, bringing many to poverty and leading many to leave the country. I connect to my culture in a more specific way in the fact that I have learned a brief amount of the Gaelic language. This was primarily a personal choice I made years back as a fascination with my Irish heritage and the culture in general. As far as being whitewashed, as far as Ireland is concerned, well, Irish people are white people, but this term more refers to assimilation and how certain cultures can be diluted to fit the current culture. This can be seen in the fact that when the English came, that's when there's plenty of shifts in the way Irish people wrote, in the fact that they changed to writing in English instead of Gaelic. Ultimately, in North America, the culture of Irish people isn't very prevalent due to the fact that there isn't a high Irish population in the continent. This leads to the fact that as far as Canadian culture and American culture, they don't have as big of an effect as the English did on Irish literature and the Irish culture as a whole.